Welcome into another edition of Mic'd Up, the first one of the month of March. Fulton Cast here with you on Mic'd Up with Jake and Fulton. No Jake LeBon today. You may either scream in happiness or cry tears of, sadness or whatever. It'll just be me this afternoon here on Mic'd Up. Jake is up in Kansas City for the MIAA tournament. It begins today as the Washburn Ichabods are in action. That game can be heard on our sister station, Country 106.9. Tip-off should be 7 minutes old. I'll actually look into that as we go throughout today's show. We'll get some look-ins and things like that. But Jake is over in Kansas City. He's covering Washburn's matchup in the first round of the MIAA tournament. So he is not here today. It is just me today. If Washburn wins today, this will be the setup tomorrow, as the Ichabods will also play at noon tomorrow. So as of now, it is just me riding solo. Some of you are very happy to hear that. Some of you are indifferent. Some of you might be a little sad. No matter what the emotional feeling is, I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you're listening on today's edition of Mic'd Up. We have a jam-packed edition of the show. We got a lot of Big 12 hoops to get through today. Of course, we have the now new Big 12 champions for this year, and by new, I only use it because it's new for this season alone. For the 17th time, the Kansas Jayhawks are Big 12 champions under head coach Bill Self. We'll get that. K-State has their senior night coming up tonight against Oklahoma. We'll preview that as well as I will take a look at it. And I will also be joined by Kellis Robinett of the Wichita Eagle and the Kansas City Star. He will join me on the 2 o'clock hour to look at Kansas State's senior night matchup coming up tonight as well from Bramlage Coliseum. We're going to look at the Kansas City Chiefs and veteran wide receivers. I've basically split this into 2 groups, 2 thought processes. And we're going to look at those and see just some names of some guys who the Chiefs may want to consider looking into. Not saying they should, no matter what, sign any of these guys. But if you can't get someone like Juju Smith-Schuster back on the roster, I have some names and some options that could be looking for a similar type of contract with the Chiefs as well. I'm running the show by myself, so you know we're going to talk the Kansas City Royals today. But more specifically, one of my favorite events starts up next week, a week from today, actually. It's the first matchup of the World Baseball Classic. Players start leaving for that tomorrow. Players across camps and all 30 spring training camps will begin leaving tomorrow to report to their teams to get ready for the World Baseball Classic. It begins March 8th with our first matchup. Pool play runs from March 8th to about March 13th, I believe. And then we move into the quarterfinals, the semifinals, and the finals. Numerous Kansas City Royals, 9 different players, will be leaving to represent various teams for their countries. We're going to look at who's leaving for the World Baseball Classic and what doors does that open for certain guys to get more extended looks, because there are some interesting players who could get some better opportunities with certain players leaving for the World Baseball Classic. We'll look at that as well. We have Everyone Loves the List and CrossTalk with Brendan today. Brendan with Jake Gahn is so much graciously offered his time, telling me with both the list and CrossTalk today. So he will join us at the end of the 1 o'clock hour as well. As always, you can join in on the show on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429. Or, of course, we are live on YouTube still. You can still see my face. The Royals hat is back. The Kansas City Monarchs jersey is being worn today as a celebration of baseball season. My more baseball-themed wardrobe can now be used a lot more often because also the weather is cooperating. It's oddly nice today. That's not going to hold. You heard with our weather, you're at the top of the hour. It's probably going to get stormy and more cold the next couple of days, and I personally am incredibly bummed by that. Like, incredibly bummed by that. Either way, you can hop in on our live stream. Go to youtube.com. Sports on 580 is the YouTube channel. Please subscribe if you have not. You can see all of our live shows between Mic'd Up and 580 Sports. Like you watch the ones for today. You can actually, if you really feel like it, watch back old episodes of Mic'd Up and 580 Sports Talk with Brendan and Dan. You can do that on our Sports on 580 YouTube page. We have our instant reactions. You can watch Brendan's instant reaction from KU Senior Night last night. You would get to see Dan's instant reaction from Bramlage Coliseum tonight because he will be there covering the game, which you can also follow on our Twitter page, Sports on 580. A lot of great stuff's happening on our YouTube channel. But you can join there, watch the live stream of today's show, and hop in on the live comment section as well. But to kick off today's edition of Mic'd Up, the Kansas Jayhawks are Big 12 champions yet again with a victory over Texas Tech last night. KU has clinched a share of the Big 12 championship. They, at worst, will share it with Texas for the 17th time. Under Bill Self, KU is the Big 12 champion. For the 64th time in their history, Kansas is your Big 12 champion, which does mean, before I break into the game itself, my favorite stat has now returned. It took us a minute, but we are back. Bill Self, once again, has as many conference championships as he does home losses that Allen Fieldhouse. That stat went away for a little bit because parity in the league grew. It became a little bit harder to consistently win at home. Plus, just the league got a lot better. But it's now back to 17-17. Bill Self has many conference championships as he does losses at Allen Fieldhouse. It's my favorite stat. It's a very fun stat, and it delights me through and through. But KU did win secure, at least to share the Big 12 title. They will win it outright through one of two scenarios. Either A, TCU beats Texas tonight, and we'll preview that a little bit later on in today's show. We'll take just a tiny glance at the other Big 12 action tonight. TCU would beat Texas in Fort Worth tonight, which is possible. Fort Worth, not an easy place to play. Winning on the road in the Big 12, very difficult. Just ask Texas Tech. Just ask K-State. So if TCU wins tonight, KU retroactively becomes the sole Big 12 champions. They win it outright. And then the game between KU and Texas on Saturday means quite literally bupkis, which means if that does happen, I implore all of you to put your mortgages and your rents on Texas money line. Don't actually do that, please, for the love of everything in the universe. Don't actually do that. It's not actually advice. But KU, with really nothing to play for, and I use air quotes on that, historically has tended to not look great on last games of the season. The thing I was referencing is KU's first time they got swept by an opponent in a season with Oklahoma State, and they lost the final game of the regular season to Oklahoma State. I want to say like 2017, I think. I'm not confident in that. But they lost the final regular season in Oklahoma State because they had nothing to play for, and they shouldn't have lost to that team, and they did. So I wouldn't be surprised if they lose Texas. Also, Texas, really good team. Either way, point notwithstanding, those are your conference thing news. So unfortunately, that does mean K-State is now out of any chances to move into a share for the Big 12 title, but they do have some things to play for, and we will get to the Wildcats later on in today's show. But it was senior night for the Jayhawks, and it was just another good, tough win of a very odd game, because this was a game where the final score was 67-63. KU defeated Texas Tech. And it was a game in which Tech never really felt like they were going to win. Like, I speak for myself only here, but I've heard this from many others, and Brendan and Dan and I were chatting before the show. You never really felt like Tech was going to win. They felt like they were there, but not actually there. And so I kind of word as, Tech was feisty. Is the thing a good way to put it? They were feisty. And they just never fully went away. And that made it a little bit more irritating to have to deal with. But overall, and of course, in the second half as well, KU cannot stop at all. Texas Tech is finding ways to get buckets and hang around. But KU does get the win. They get two great performances out of their seniors. Jalen Wilson with 21 points, another 20-point effort. Did not make a three on the night. He was really off shooting. Only shot 6 of 16 for the game, but made 9 free throws, performed well, got buckets when he needed to. And then the ex-Texas Tech Red Raider, Kevin McCullough, just had some great moments in the game. Finishes with 14 points and 9 rebounds, made a pair of three-pointers, and had a fantastic winning play near the end with, time trickling down. KU needed a bucket to try and extend their lead and kind of give them a chance. And there's a little bit of a scrum at the rim for it. All the bodies were down. Somehow Kevin McCullough comes away with the ball, puts the ball up for a layup and in, and helps secure Kansas a victory. And that's just what Kevin McCullough does. He plays great defense, got a pair of blocks in the game, got a steal as well, but he plays great defense. He's the Twice and Naismith Defensive Player of the Year semifinalist. It's just what he does. He plays good, hard defense, tries to get you consistent buckets when he can, but overall, it's just a good cog and piece into this KU machine. And then not a senior, but still a great night to really propel him going into the tournament season. DeJuan Harris, 16 points, made a couple three-pointers, had 5 assists. Just overall a good, complete win for Kansas. And that is what's so important for KU at this time. When KU is on and playing together and playing solid defense, most importantly. And that's the biggest thing. They limited Texas Tech. Texas Tech still shot 41%, from the floor on the night. They could not make a three to save their life. They were 3 of 16 from three. KU had similar struggles. Neither team could really shoot it well. When Kansas can defend, they are as good as any team in the country. But when that defense falters is when they can get bit. KU has, in my opinion, two real big Achilles heels. One is that defense. It's not being able to defend consistently, and that is one of those things that could bite them in the tournament, keep them from being a Final Four team, keep them from trying to really have a good shot at repeating their national title. One of those things to where, they might lose in the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight. I still feel no matter what, this team is a second weekend team. I feel the same thing about K-State. I think both Sunflower schools are making it to the second weekend. Barring something really weird happening in the first weekend, you should see the Wildcats and the Jayhawks advancing past opening weekend. But KU and their defense, can they play it soundly enough? Can they limit easy looks? Can they play aggressively and locked in for 40 minutes? That's always the thing for me and what could end up limiting them. The other big piece is this, and they haven't had this problem as of late, which I think is evidence of it, is does someone help Jalen Wilson? Because during that losing streak that KU had, when they had lost, 3 games in a row, when, even I was kind of in a sky is falling mentality, as we all remember when I was going to lose my mind if they had lost to, Kentucky, that would have been terrible. But look at the box scores from those losses, and it tells you a lot. Like when they lost to Kansas State in overtime, 83-82, Jalen Wilson had 38 points. 38. But only was out of 16 from Grady Dick and 17 for KJ Adams helped. But then no one else outside of them really tried, and that was such a close game. But a little bit of help almost got them the victory there. Then you look at the blowout against TCU, and really no one played well, and also TCU was shooting the lights. So they were 8 of 15 from 3 in that game. You got 30 from Jalen Wilson. The next highest was 10 from Kevin McCullough. Like 0 from DeJuan Harris, 8 from Grady Dick, 4 from KJ Adams, and the bench did virtually nothing. It's again, Jalen Wilson and just guys. You go to Baylor here, and they're lost to Baylor. Grady Dick started to come around that when he ended up leading all scores with 24, and then Jalen at 23. But still no help from a lot of other guys as well. That's always been the biggest thing for me. And this is not a novel thought. I will not present this as a Fulton Caster exclusive thought here. But Kansas and their success is tied to does someone help out Jalen Wilson? Because Jalen's more often than not, and even kind of through a slump as of late, had not been his usual 20-point-a-game scorer to kind of get to this tail end of this streak here. But Jalen's going to get buckets. Jalen Wilson's going to find a way to get points. Someone has to help. And I think the most important guy to help is DeJuan Harris. And the reason for that is when DeJuan Harris is aggressive, when DeJuan Harris is a threat offensively, the way teams can defend Kansas changes drastically. They can no longer completely sag off of DeJuan Harris and congest the lane, which is evidenced by when DeJuan Harris reaches double figures, KU's undefeated. And I think the real stat is as long as DeJuan Harris gets to 3 points, KU is undefeated. Like when DeJuan Harris is a factor offensively to an extent, in addition to facilitating and running the offense, Kansas is an infinitely better team than when it's mainly just Jalen Wilson and a bunch of guys. And I think that will be more important than their defense playing consistently is going to be what their issue is going to be in the NCAA tournament and what they need, because you can get away with a bad night on defense if you have guys all scoring and you're just making up for it that way. You can find a way to escape that. It is hard in a single elimination tournament to survive off nights offensively. It is hard to do that. And I think that's going to be Kansas's big thing going forward. And that's why, we're moving it. It's officially March. We're moving into March Madness season. The Big 12 regular season wraps up this weekend. Well, the Big 12 tournament in Kansas City next weekend. Selection Sunday is coming up just right around the corner. All this March stuff's coming around. We're going to look more deeply at KU and K-State's March Madness prospects and wind up looking at their matches when the bracket gets released in a couple weeks. But KU is going to be dependent on, can multiple guys be successful every game? If it's more than just Jalen Wilson and some dudes, this team can go far. This is a Final Four level team. But if the other guys can't score and the other guys just can't help, then this is the team that could see their time end in the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight. Who knows? But KU gets that big win. It was great to see, and they are your Big 12 champions yet again, and it just delights me. As a KU guy through and through, it delights me, but just such a great win for the Jayhawks last night. It's the only Big 12 game on. Very weird schedule. Coming up later in the show, we will look at K-State. I promise you, we will talk Wildcats in their senior night, both by myself and with Kellis Robinett at the Wichita Eagle, the Kansas City Star. We'll take a brief look at Texas and TCU as well. Later on, let's have a look at the Chiefs and the veteran wide receivers. We have a break to take care of. We'll be right back here on Mic'd Up. Welcome back into Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. The franchise tag deadline is the first stop we will take on our road to the NFL new league year beginning. The new league year begins officially on March 15th. The legal tampering period, a very fun name, officially begins on March 13th. That is the time when agents and representatives from teams and players may meet and get together to begin discussing free agency negotiations and free agency deals. Nothing is official and signed until the 15th. However, those discussions we had a little bit earlier, the idea is, you ramp it up a little bit and kind of give, a little more fuel on the fire. The fact of the matter is legal tampering period is also kind of fake because these guys are already really starting here at the combine. There's going to be a few dinners, a few not actually tampering, but definitely tampering times with some of these discussions. But before that is a much more important date, even particularly for the Kansas City Chiefs. Next Tuesday, so coming up this coming Tuesday, is March 7th, which is the deadline for franchise tag designations. They have until 3 p.m. Central Time that day to decide for teams, not just any team, to decide if they're going to use the franchise tag that day. Obviously, the Chiefs and Orlando Brown are one of those big ones. We've been over that at length. There's also multiple guys, but another one that I find interesting, and a guy that probably will be getting the tag for sure, is Lamar Jackson, the quarterback of the Baltimore Ravens. He has been trying to work out an extension with the Baltimore Ravens. They tried to work it last offseason. Lamar had a self-imposed deadline of roughly the start of, training camp. And once training camp began, he was like, I'm not talking this anymore. I'm not discussing this in season. Because Lamar is essentially negotiating it himself. He has assistance from other people. It's not like he truly just him reading all the language, doing all the stuff. But Lamar does not have an agent. So Lamar is leading these negotiations. He is likely to get a franchise tag because, one, the Ravens are not letting him hit the open market. Like, this is very similar to Devontae Adams last year a little bit. And then everyone was like, he could be a free agent, could be a bidding war. That was never going to happen. The Packers were always going to tag him and then make another move. The Ravens are going to do the same thing with Lamar Jackson. And this is interesting. There's been reports circulating today that the NFLPA has advised Lamar Jackson to not soften his stance on what he's looking for in a contract. And that's notable because what Lamar is looking for is a fully guaranteed deal a la the Deshaun Watson contract, which will make even more owners hate the Haslams because the Haslams have caused a problem for every team needing to pay a quarterback. Every young star quarterback, like Burrow, like Herbert, like Jackson, are well within their rights to demand a fully guaranteed contract. Because they can point and go, you look at that guy that hadn't played in a while, that guy with all those issues, the nasty man, he got $200+ million fully guaranteed. 5 years, $200+ million, all guaranteed. My recent stats are better than the nasty man. My track record off the field is better than the nasty man. So why shouldn't I get a fully guaranteed deal? The Haslams screwed that up for every team. And every owner has to hate them for that. But that's what Lamar Jackson wants, and I'm not surprised. I really don't blame him. I've always said, go get your bag, Kings. Go do it. But he's kind of the number one thing for me. Daniel Jones is the guy who will probably get the franchise tag as quarterbacks go. But it'll be interesting going forward. But that deadline, sooner rather than later, is coming up on Tuesday, and we'll get to know more who gets the franchise tag. We'll take another timeout. We're looking at the Chiefs and veteran wide receivers when we come back. Little MIAA tournament update here on Mic'd Up, as that's where Jake is. In case you're just joining us, Jake is not with me, just Fulton here today, as Jake is currently in Kansas City covering the first day of the MIAA tournament. 8th-seeded Washburn against 9th-seeded Missouri Western. As of right now, 5:05 left in the first half. 25-21 Missouri Western leading the Ichabods right now. No one can shoot it a lick right now. Both teams really struggling to score. The issue right now, Washburn 7 turnovers, Missouri Western just 3. That is the big difference at the moment. You can't hear that game on our sister station, Country 106.9, with Jake Laban on the call. I'll give you some more periodic updates. We'll look at who wins. See, hopefully the Ichabods can get a win. Again, just a programming note. If the Ichabods do pull out the victory and get a comeback here against Missouri Western, Jake will be gone again tomorrow. It'll just be me tomorrow. If the Ichabods unfortunately lose, Jake will be back with me tomorrow as well. As always, you can join in on the show on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429, or in the live comments section of YouTube. Go to youtube.com, SportsOn580. Go to the YouTube channel, subscribe if you haven't. We'd appreciate it. And then you can watch the live feed and jump into the live comment section of the show as well. Looking at the NFL, with the new league year beginning, and this part of the year is all about what will teams do with their rosters. The Chiefs are no exception. The big talking point with the Chiefs right now is the offensive line, particularly Orlando Brown. The franchise tag deadline coming up, Brown will probably get tagged on the 7th with the idea of trying to still work towards a longer-term extension. It'll be very, very similar to last offseason. That storyline will be the Chiefs' consistent thread all throughout. However, the second, maybe biggest storyline, but other things as we look at free agency, is just who the Chiefs might add and what other contract moves they might make. Of course, we're probably going to get at some point a Frank Clark cutting announcement. He will probably be cut to save about $21 million. No hard feelings. It's just Clark ain't playing on a $28 million cap hit. As we noted yesterday on the show, the Chiefs could very much try to bring him back. When we were talking with Matt Derrick, that's been even suggested a little bit. Brett Veach kind of talked about when we played some clips from Brett Veach yesterday. So cutting Frank Clark doesn't mean Frank's gone for forever. It just means he's gone for now. And I would make that clear to Frank Clark upon cutting him. Chiefs also going to probably try working a contract extension with Chris Jones to try and lower his cap hit and make some money. And always, if they need money, they can trigger the Mahomes deal and clear up a decent amount of cap space there and kick that can down the road, which they luckily didn't have to do last year, which makes doing it this year and going forward a little bit easier. But one position group I wanted to discuss, looking at the Chiefs and their offseason plans and what they will do in free agency, is wide receiver, because we learned some things last year. We learned, one, the Chiefs are incredibly willing to trade a top-tier player, in this case, a top-tier wide receiver like Tyreek Hill, if they need to make other cap things work and set themselves up in a different situation. It worked out. The other thing we learned is this. We learned it on the field. Patrick Mahomes can make a very average group of wide receivers pretty dang good as long as he has Travis Kelce at least. With that in mind, I wanted to look at the wide receiver situation and what could the Chiefs do, because as of now, they have 3 wide receivers guaranteed under contract who will be taking snaps for the team next season. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, I know some people floated him as a cut candidate. I wouldn't, because he's useful. Like, is he wide receiver 1 star power? No. But does MVS do good things? Yes. He's also not like MVS is cap hit next season. Let's play a game of what is Marquez Valdes-Scantling's cap hit in 2023. I have to type so much to get to this point, but I think if I just type in these 2 words, I'll get what I want. Let's see. Yep, that worked exactly. Yeah, Marquez Valdes-Scantling's cap hit for next year is $11 million. Which some of you might go, $11 million? That's a lot. Oh, my goodness. It always comes down to what cap do you have open. And the other part is this, and this was brilliantly laid out. Friend of the program, Seth Kaiser, in his Chief of the North newsletter today, which, as always, I recommend that you go subscribe to. Seth charges a ridiculously low price for it. It is very nice to subscribe to. You get tons of great content, especially in the offseason. Seth does some great stuff in the offseason. He put out a piece today about trying to mess with the Chiefs' cap situation and just what would he do to help the cap situation going into this offseason. And he brought up the thought that some people have suggested cutting MVS. So let's do a mini thought experiment on that real quick before we jump into the candidates to sign. If you cut MVS, you would save $7 million. His cap hit this year is a flat $11 million, very nice round number, with a $4 million dead cap. You could do that. You could. I don't disagree that you could. So then you go to, all right, you save $7 million. Can you get a player who can do all those great things that MVS does for $7 million? Probably, but not guaranteed, because MVS himself, which is like what you want, is $11 million, which is roughly what you're going to have to do in free agency. So I would still pay MVS, unless you, for some reason, no shadow of a doubt, needed to move on from him. I wouldn't do it this year. Now, next year, I consider it, because next year you save $12 million. Next year, MVS's cap hit is $14 million. His dead cap is $2 million. I'd probably move on after next year. Jake and I talked about this when we talked about the MVS signing during last offseason. It was very much a one-year contract with double years of funny money. That's what this is. He got all of his money basically last year, and now his cap hits and just excess stuff goes up this year. So I probably wouldn't cut MVS. That out of the way, your three receivers are MVS, as I said, Sky Moore, and Kadarius Toney, who Brett Veach just said those two guys will probably take an increased role, which I want to see because I like their skill sets. Those three guys are on your roster. They're going to play football next year for the Chiefs. Juju Smith-Schuster is the guy that I think all of us in Chiefs Kingdom would like back. Juju nearly had 1,000 yards receiving while dealing with multiple injuries. He showed himself to do a lot of great things for the Chiefs and play well and did a good job. The problem is he could have priced himself out of Kansas City depending on what contract he ends up seeking. He is my top choice. I want to make that very clear before I get into any of these other names here. He is my top choice for the Chiefs to bring back if they're bringing in veteran receiver help this offseason. Because what I think the Chiefs will do is they'll sign one big name veteran, and for those not watching, I once again am using air quotes, in a guy that is a household name who's probably looking for some kind of career reset. That's what I think they'll do if that guy is not Juju Smith-Schuster. Now, there are three candidates for that I've identified. Varying levels of would I even attempt this do exist on all three of these gentlemen. But they're guys I would consider and think about. I would at least, put some thought to it, depending on what they do. The first guy I think about in the idea of size compared to Juju Smith-Schuster, pardon me, is Kenny Golladay. Because Kenny Golladay, he has not been officially released yet, but he is going to be released at the start of the new league year by the New York Giants. It's going to save them a lot of money. He had an abysmal run in New York, which has very much tainted all the good things he did in Detroit. Kenny Golladay had 4 very good seasons in Detroit, one of them hampered by injury. 2019 was his best year. He had 65 catches, 1,100 yards, and 11 touchdowns. Year before that, 70 catches and 1,000 yards. 2020, the COVID year, he only played 5 games. He was injured a lot, had some issues. Then after that 2020 year, the Giants gave him a big contract for 2021. And things did not go great. In 2021, he played in 14 games, had 37 catches, only 500 yards, did not record a touchdown. And then this year, when things were really disgruntled, really hit the roof, only started 4 games, only appeared in 12, only had 6 catches all year, 1 was a touchdown. So based on recent body of work, I get it. Kenny Golladay did not have 2 good years in New York. Once he got paid, things kind of went off a cliff. That can be worrying. I will not dispute that to any level of the imagination. Any worry with MVS, I totally understand. Not MVS, Kenny Golladay. Too many names floating around my head right now. With Kenny Golladay is understanding. That being said, Kenny Golladay is 6'4", 213. He's big, he's long, he's fairly athletic, and he did have 2 good years in 18 and 19 with Detroit, including 19 when he was a Pro Bowler. Personally, I think there could be some juice left in the tires, because when we think about it, the 2021 Giants, all bad. Like, they were led by an idiot at head coach, and they were led by an idiot as the GM. Like, the entire organization was a dysfunctional mess. Then you go to this year, and I get it. He didn't play well this year. He had some issues with the coaching staff. But those are similar things we were saying about Kadarius Toney. Issues with the coaching staff. Not really being performed well. Some frictions going on. Comes to Kansas City and everything changes. I am always willing to give Andy Reid and Brett Veach the benefit of the doubt when it comes to a player. Kenny Golladay is just a guy I would potentially take a flyer on. He's not high up on my list. He's not a guy I'm spending a lot of money on. I'd be willing to give him a deal like Juju Smith-Schuster got, where it's kind of 1 year, low base salary, crap ton of incentives. And just, look, Kenny, you play well, you get paid. You don't play well, you don't get paid as well. And see what Reed and crew and that magic could work. That's kind of the top-ish guy on my list that I would be willing to take some chances on. But that's, that's just me. That's just what I think and what I would do. Plus, I mean, Kenny's not that old as well. Kenny Golladay is, he's 29. He would probably he turns 30 in December. Not December, November. Sorry, Kenny. I think that's somebody you contemplate giving a little bit of a contract to if you need the receiver help. The next guy on this list has already been fully released, so he is very much just a guy on the street, is Robert Woods. Good old Bobby Trees. Woods, similar age. He's 30 right now. He just turned 30 this year. Robert Woods has had an up and down career. Had some real good years with the Rams, was kind of lackluster in Buffalo, then went to the Rams, had great years in 18 and 19 in LA, over 1,100 yards in 19, 1,200 yards in 2018, was able to get some touchdowns, got 86 balls and 90 balls, got 90 receptions in 2020, and then kind of with the and then last year had injuries, ended up tearing up his knee, took a long time to get back. Odell Beckham Jr. came in, which took some snaps away from him as well. So there are some different things that came up. And then this year he played in Tennessee, where he did, okay, but not great. 53 catches, 500 yards, 2 touchdowns. Another guy who the production kind of makes you worry recently. But the reason why I think Robert Woods is the top of my list, I like Kenny, and Kenny's the guy I would be maybe willing to take a chance on. Robert Woods, if the Chiefs are going to go for a veteran who shouldn't cost that much money, and just can get open and make plays in the middle parts of the field, that's Robert Woods. He's not the biggest guy. He's only, 6 foot, 195 pounds. But I think he's a guy that you could use to do some of those things you needed Juju to do, which was not be a down the field threat, not be this guy who's going to stretch the field. That's MVS's role. Robert Woods could come in and be treated in the similar idea of work with Travis, find soft spots in the zone, and just help us move the chains. I think Robert Woods can do that. I really do. I think Robert Woods can be that guy if given the opportunity. Robert Woods and Kenny Golladay, I think, should be and would be the Chiefs' top thought processes for probably guys that want. Now, Robert Woods a little bit differently. I don't know if he's still looking for one more big contract because he got decently paid with the Rams. But he's a guy to where I consider he could fit the role if you, and this all leans on is Juju back. Because if Juju wants to come back and can come back at the right price, that's your number one move because it worked. It is proven to work. You know it'll work. The other guys you got to think of some opportunities on, but those are the top 2 guys. Brandon Cooks is another name I would potentially consider. That depends on if Houston does, in fact, release him. He asked for a trade at the deadline last year, didn't get it, sat out the first game after the deadline dealing with some stuff, and he's openly said he doesn't want to be part of a rebuild. He does not want to be part of a rebuild, doesn't want to be there. If they release him, that is a really interesting point. Cooks is smaller and speedier, so he wouldn't really fit the mold that you would be trying to replace with Juju. Like a guy like Kenny Golladay or Robert Woods could, but it's still a thing I'd consider kicking some tires on. Then there just comes to this list. Those are guys that I'd say are trying to reset their markets, would be 1-year deals to just try and get another payday. Then I created a second list upon more examination of veteran dudes. I use veteran loosely here. Basically, they're guys who are close to 28, 29. Never been, just guys who've been in the league for a little bit, who would just be trying to stay in the league, would probably take 1-year deals or something short just to be around. The one name at the top of that list is Julio Jones is a free agent, and he turns, I think, 35 this year. So that's the big part with Julio is how much juice is left in that tank. He wouldn't cost you nothing. He would cost you nothing because of lack of production and age. But, I mean, veteran, big-bodied guy to try and make some plays in a limited capacity, I think that's an option. Jarvis Landry is a free agent. 30 years old, probably some juice left in the tank. What do you want to do there? Good production at times. If you want an over-the-middle guy to make some plays, he's an option. Then we get into what I call the really kind of out-there options, but dudes that I wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs kicked their tires on just to see what they could potentially add to the team if they were open to it. Sterling Shepard, Nelson Aguilar, and Jamison Crowder. None of those names probably excite you as a Chiefs fan, and really they shouldn't. But I think they all would qualify as wide receiver 3 types that they would honestly be in the mold of a Justin Watson, a guy that just kind of can be at the end of the roster, there to pick up some slack, can make some plays. Out of that trio, Jamison Crowder's always been like he's a really good slot receiver, but that's also been kind of filled by Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney, so you never know. Those are just some names that I would float about, names that I would consider if I were Brett Veach and I needed to make a move at wide receiver and wanted to try and fill in some spots, fill in some gaps, and see what I could do going forward. Number 1 on that list is always and will truly be Juju Smith-Schuster. That's the guy I want back. I know Jake wants him back. I assume most of you in Chiefs Kingdom want him back as well. But when thinking about the overall prospects of wide receiver free agency, what the Chiefs can do, what they will do, they have a way to make up and create about $40 million in cap space. They really could. If you franchise tag Orlando Brown and play him on just that deal, half of it's gone. Because Orlando will play on a 1-year deal of $20 million. That's where a Brown extension is very helpful. But if not, you can find a way to get 1 or 2 veteran receivers to help you out. Because Justin Watson, also a free agent, I don't know if the Chiefs will bring him back. He's another guy that if they pay cheaply enough, you could run it back with that same wide receiver room. You could try, which worked. Then it goes into, seeing money for defensive players and doing different things like that, and finding those different little aspects to analyze and figure out. Who knows? But overall, it's figuring out what the Chiefs can do at wide receiver, and now they've shown, and it's been proven, you don't need big, flashy, sexy names out there to be the wide receivers. You need dudes that you think you can get them to work hard, know their role, and play it well. That's why Kenny Golladay, I have questions about the emotional makeup and the attitude, but at the same time, it's Andy Reid and the Chiefs culture, which has just worked. There were people who said things about Kadarius Toney's makeup and his attitude. That all went out the door once he came into Kansas City. I wonder with a guy like Kenny Golladay, maybe that helps him as well. I don't know for sure. I'm not going to act like I know all that stuff there, but those are just my options here. And it's entirely because the Chiefs have proven and they've shown that they don't need flashy, big name wide receivers to get the job done. They just need guys that can fit a system and fit a mold. And this isn't even considering what they could do in the draft. I think if they go wide receiver in the draft, it would be 2nd or 3rd round. I think if they spend a 1st round pick, it's on edge or offensive line. That's what I think more specifically on that front. But you never know going forward what the Chiefs might end up doing to try and put themselves in a good spot. We'll take one more final time out here to wrap up the noon hour of Mic'd Up. I'm going to get into more Royals to begin the 1 o'clock hour. But J.G. Piccolo was on sports radio in Kansas City earlier today. And he made an interesting comment that makes me even happier that the Royals have made some changes. J.G. Piccolo noted that due to the injury in the outfield to Drew Waters and a few other factors, the Royals are actively looking to potentially add some extra insurance for outfield depth in either late free agency or trades. The team actively trying to make itself better and have more depth and be prepared and not just sit there and hope and pray that things work out. Novel concept. But overall, it's just the idea of this team being run differently, and I enjoy that. The other big thing was this. Michael Garcia has been getting some run at third base here lately, and Matt Quatrero has been asked about that, and I'm paraphrasing here, I don't have the direct quote in front of me, but essentially he said, I want Michael to have a chance to make us not get to leave him off the roster. Essentially, make him prove that he has to be on a spot. Which I love, because I know everyone, wasn't included. In January when it came out that Hunter Dozier was probably going to be the third baseman, I was so irritated. Incredibly so. But this coaching staff, I think, is already showing, even though I still think Dozier's going to win that job, just be prepared for it. It sucks, but I just think that's going to be the reality of the situation. This, as of now, does seem to be a coaching staff willing to change. And when, maybe our original thought process wasn't the right thought process. Which is just, again, that far cry change from what they've been for years. It's why I have optimism. Is the optimism I have probably too high? Sure. But these are the reasons why. Is everything seems to be so different from years past that I don't think you can actually, I don't think you should let the scars from the past impact your hope for the future. That's what I think, but either way, it's going to be fun. Well, that's it for the noon hour. Coming up, we have more 1 o'clock mic'd up coming up next. for hour number 2 here on Mic'd Up with Jake and Fulton. Just Fulton Cast here with you this afternoon. Jake LeBon in Kansas City as Washburn's taking on Missouri Western in round 1 of the MIAA tournament up at Peninsula Auditorium. Quick score update for that. The second half is underway at 17 minutes and 2 seconds left in the second half. Missouri Western to a 36-32 lead. The Ichabods did leave it a half thanks to a 6-0 run to close the half, but all of a sudden Missouri Western going on a run of their own. This is a tough back and forth battle. And I said it earlier one time of this game, I'll say it again. Turnovers are biting Washburn now. They're up to 13 turnovers on the afternoon. That is their big issue right now. Andrew Orr leads the Ichabods in scoring with 10 points so far on the afternoon. So that is where Jake is. That's why it's just me today. Coming up in the 1 o'clock hour, we're going to look at the Royals in the World Baseball Classic, which is also going to parlay into me telling you a bit about the World Baseball Classic. Arguably my favorite international event, mainly because I love baseball so much and getting to add it to it international and country by country flavor is fantastic. I think it's a great way to grow the game. But we're going to look at that to start off this hour. We have Everyone Loves the List in honor of Brendan being with me in a conversation he and I have had off air. And also in addition to the theme of this week, turning into fruits and vegetables. Brendan and I are going to give you our list for our best lemonade flavors because we have opinions and we have thoughts. And lemonade is one of like the 3 things Brendan drinks, which means I know that man's got opinions and he's got thoughts. Brendan's going to join me for that list. That's what we're going to do today as well. And then Brendan will stick around afterwards and join me for some CrossTalk to end this hour. We also, again, will have Kellis Robinett coming up at the top of the 2 o'clock hour to talk K-State hoops. And I'm going to talk and break down the game myself as well. So a lot of K-State hoops coming up in the 2 o'clock hour. So you Wildcat fans out there don't want to miss for sure that hour of today's show. As always, you can join in on the program on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429. Text line is wide open with just me today. You got thoughts, you got opinions on what I've talked about, Chiefs and the wide receivers, KU winning a Big 12 title, K-State senior night tonight. Got thoughts on the Royals and how they're doing. They won another big spring training game yesterday, 12-6 over Cleveland, with a good showing by Michael Garcia, who drove in 4 runs, including a home run. You got thoughts on anything like that? You got thoughts in general? Let me hear them. Hit me up on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429. We also, of course, are live on YouTube. Go to youtube.com. Sports on 580 is the YouTube channel. Subscribe if you would. We'd appreciate it. You can join in the live comment section of that as well. But to lead off this hour of the programming, it's me. I'm here. I'm wearing an old school baseball jersey and a baseball hat. We're talking baseball on the show today. The Royals are, of course, making a good run to start off spring training. They got a lot of spring training games left the rest of this month. Official opening day is 4 weeks from tomorrow, March 30th, end of the month, 28 days from tomorrow. We're 29 days away from opening day when the Royals will take on the Minnesota Twins and Zach Greinke probably taking the mound. It's Greinke or it's Singer. They haven't announced it yet. They'll be a little while till they announce it, but it's going to be one of those two, I'd have to assume at this point. The Royals will take on the Minnesota Twins and likely Joe Ryan in that game, or Pablo Lopez now that he's out of there. I don't know. Who knows? It's whatever. It's going to be fun no matter what, though. Either way, spring training is a time for guys to win position battles, for you to show up for your manager. When we talked to David Lesky yesterday, he made a great point that it's not the opening day roster is 1 out of 100 plus days. The big thing you need to do is, if you can't show your case to make the opening day roster, it is to put yourself at the forefront of a manager's mind so that when a call-up needs to happen, when that needs to happen, you can make your case and you will be at the forefront of their minds to make the decision. That's another important part of spring training. So even if you don't make that initial roster, you have chances to prove yourself and be right there on the cusp of getting a call up when those first ones happen, because injuries happen, trades happen, guys underperform. All those different things can impact your ability to eventually make the roster. So don't get disheartened if you don't make the opening day roster, but you got to perform well to give yourself a chance. And that's where the World Baseball Classic comes in. The Classic begins, and I pulled up the schedule here. It begins March 8th. The first round of games begin March 8th with Pool A in Taichung, Taiwan. That's where Pool A will be played. There's Pool B, which will be to have games taking place in Tokyo, Japan. Pool C will be games in Phoenix, Arizona. And Pool D will be games in Miami, Florida. All these pools are run from starting on March 8th to the 15th. So for a week, we will get pool play. I'm not going to get into the nuances of how the World Baseball Classic will work, unless some of you really, really, really want to know, because it can be kind of a niche event to want to follow. The important part is this will run from about March 8th to March 21st, when the championship game is played in Miami on the 21st. So it's 13 days. It's 2 weeks. Like, these guys will be done 9 days from opening day. Spring training will be almost done by the time these guys are back. So they're going to miss essentially the rest of spring training, or a majority of what's happening left in spring training. For the Royals, these are the players you need to know who are going to be leaving and playing. And also, if you want to follow this event, what teams you might want to root for. Team USA, Brady Singer and Bobby Witt Jr. are going to be a part of that roster. For Team Italy, it's Vinny Pasquantino and Nicky Lopez. Team Venezuela will feature Max Castillo, Carlos Hernandez, and Salvador Perez. Team Puerto Rico will feature MJ Melendez, and Team Cuba will feature Ronald Bolaños. So the Royals are spread out amongst the many teams we're going to have at the World Baseball Classic. 5 different teams will represent at least one Royal playing for their country. With all those guys being gone, though, that opens some doors, because that means if those guys are gone, their innings, their spots, their at-bats are open. Someone has to fill those spots. And that is what I want to get to, because I don't think we've noted enough how this affects what could do for the Royals. The first thing above all I want to get to is with Michael Massey, who is currently in a battle with Nicky Lopez for the second base spot, which makes Nicky going to play in the World Baseball Classic very fascinating. Like, I'm happy Nicky's going to get a go. Go represent Team Italy. Do your thing. That's awesome. Good for you, Nicky. I love it. But to me, that means one of two things more than not. Either Nicky's been told, dude, this is your job. Don't worry about it. Or maybe he's been told it's Massey's job and Nicky was probably mainly playing for a backup spot that he does have. Because it's interesting that you would take time away if you're truly embattled in a true competitive moment to win a job. But also, this is a potentially once-in-a-career opportunity. It's why I want all these guys to be able to go, because this Classic happens, I believe, once every 3 years? 3 or 4. I'm really bad at remembering the timing of the World Baseball Classic. I'm happy when it comes up all the time, but man, do I forget all the time the breaks in between. But it's not a yearly event. So who knows? When this comes around in a couple more years, you might not have a chance to play anymore. You know, it's similar to the Olympics in that mindset of like, you only get so many chances. Same thing like a World Cup. You only get so many chances, so you need to take advantage of the ones you're given. So I don't know what's going to happen there, but on that line, this is a huge opportunity for Michael Massey. Let's say Michael Massey plays great defensively at second and just hits the snot out of the ball for like the 2 weeks Nicky Lopez is gone. Michael Massey probably locks up the job, and he will be your opening day second baseman. That's a huge opportunity for him when his main competition is not in the room. Like, that is a massive opportunity for Michael Massey. He's the one I look at the most here for the World Baseball Classic and could really steal himself a job. Not really steal, but secure himself a job. That's the better word to use. Secure rather than steal. The other thing I look at here is pitching. Singer, Bolaños, and Castillo are all going to be gone. Singer and Castillo are the main two out of that. Bolaños, not really. But those are innings that are now open. Particularly, those are starting pitching. Air quotes again, since starters really only like 3 innings in this, and you can use multiple guys that count as starters in the game. Point still stands. And Carlos Hernandez being gone as well. If you look at all those guys being gone, with Singer gone, Castillo gone, Hernandez gone, Bolaños gone, guys like Jonathan Heasley, Chris Bubich, Jackson Kowar, all get now more opportunities to try and show they deserve a rotation spot. I'm of the belief the rotation right now locked up, or 3 spots are locked up. Brady Singer, Zach Greinke, Jordan Lyles. Those 3 players are going to be in the rotation. No ifs, ands, or buts. Zach is Zach. That ain't changing. Brady, with how elite he was, he's in that rotation until he flames out. And then you don't sign Jordan Lyles to be an innings-eating starting pitcher to do anything else. Like, that signing was just veteran backstop to put in there to, be a 4th or 5th rotation guy. That's Lyles. So that means you have 2 spots left open. as of now, I'm of the belief that they are Daniel Lynch's and Brad Keller's to lose. I think they will earn those opportunities, particularly Lynch, because he started the first spring training game of the year. That, it doesn't have a lot of weight to it. It has some, but I really do think Lynch is going to be a guy who's going to get that opportunity. But that means Heasley, Bubic, and Coar need to show that they either maybe put me in the pen and give me a chance or try and take those spots away. That truly would be stealing. Take a man's job is what you're trying to do, essentially, which is a brutal way to put it, but that is what's happening. So with more innings being available, you could see more of Heasley, more of Bubic, more of Coar. And Heasley and Coar are going to fight a real uphill battle because they each got beat up in their first opportunities. I mean, they got rocked. With that in mind, unless they really show out, they're probably both going to start the year down in AAA. But even if you do, you can use these extra innings to show Matt Quatraro that the minute a rotation spot's open, which it will. Pitchers don't perform well. Pitchers get hurt. Things get rescheduled. Rotation, I've told us a lot. You set up a 5-man rotation, you need like 7 starting pitchers. Realistically, you need 7 starting pitchers in a given year minimum. Because a couple of guys are going to miss time. That's the way this game works. To go an entire year with the same 5 guys doing all your starts is borderline impossible. Now, a guy like Ryan Yarbrough comes into the situation as well because he can be a bit of a spot starter, long reliever. That does become interesting, but that also makes the clutter even more, which does mean, again, you need to show yourself and perform. And so his extra innings are so important for guys like Singer, like Heasley, like Bubic, and Coar, with a guy like Singer who's going to be out the door playing for Team USA. So those are the guys, pitching-wise, I think can really get the most run and really going to get the most opportunities to really show what they can do are Heasley, Coar, and Bubic. Then we get to a player who's not really playing for a starting spot, but is really trying to get to a roster spot. And David Lesky brought him up on Monday as well. Freddie Fermin, which is just interesting. His case is interesting to me. Jake and I have talked about this a lot, that since MJ Melendez is technically your backup catcher, you don't really need to carry a designated catcher on your bench. Because in theory, when Sal needs the day off and everyone's going good, Sal goes to DH, MJ goes behind the plate. Normal days, Sal's behind the plate, MJ's in left field. You would only really need that third catcher if someone got hurt, which, as I've said numerous times, if one of them is behind the plate and someone gets hurt, you just limp to the end of the game and make it work. Teams have designated emergency catchers for a reason. And I think you can make it work with your lineup where you don't cause problems. But Freddie Fermin's about to get a crap ton of catching opportunities because your 2 starting catchers are out the door. Like, Salvador Perez and MJ Melendez are going to be gone for a bit, and they play for 2 good teams, so they might be gone for a while. Like, Team Italy might not make it out of Pool A, so Vinny and Nikki could be back relatively quickly. Whereas, Venezuela and Puerto Rico, one of them is going home because they're in there with the Dominican team, and the Dominican team is a machine every year. But so is Puerto Rico. But, those teams, even with Venezuela, could go further. It means they're gone longer. If I had to make a guess, I'd say Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic advance out of that pool, but that's a whole different thing. So that will give so many catching opportunities to Freddie Fermin and Logan Porter. Logan Porter is a guy that's not talked about a lot. He's been played mainly at AA as a backup catcher for the Royals. He's not done a ton. But what's really fun about Logan is he can hit pretty well. He's really improved his swing. He's really started to really improve himself offensively. He's looked a little bit pretty nice in spring training thus far. Defensively, still needs some work behind the plate. But those 2 dudes are about to get a ton of catching opportunities. Can one of them push enough to make Quatraro go, man, I really actually kind of want a third catcher? Because then the thought might go, let's just make MJ a full-time left fielder. And don't ever put MJ behind the plate. It comes down to roster construction and roster flexibility, and a guy like Freddie Fermin, a guy like Logan Porter have opportunities to, not steal a job or steal a roster spot, but secure one. There's just a lot of things that are going to happen with this World Baseball Classic coming up, and that's the key. And that's such an interesting part of spring training this year, is the amount of guys leaving for the World Baseball Classic means so many names of guys that just may not normally get a look because, they're buried on the depth chart, so to speak. Even though spring training is the time to get those guys a lot more appearances and a lot more looks, because you know what your veterans can do. Either way, you get so many more opportunities to see what those guys can do. It is fascinating and will be incredibly fascinating to see what the Royals do in terms of getting those guys playing time with the other members of the team away from the World Baseball Classic. But then also, what do those guys do with the opportunity? Does Michael Massey play well enough that when Nicky comes back, all Nicky's playing for is super utility bench guy? Does Massey stick the flag in the center of the field and say, this is my spot at second base? I'm not moving. This is my job. Because this is his opportunity. He's going to have at least 7 days, pretty much, guaranteed to do that. If not a little bit longer, because, travel and things like that. But he's going to get that opportunity. Can he do it? Can a guy like Heasley or Bubic or Kowar use this opportunity with extra innings to really make it a hard look of like, man, is it Brad Keller we want in that fifth rotation spot? Or we put Brad back in the bullpen and one of you three gets the fifth rotation spot? Can Freddie Fermin or Logan Porter show, man, we really should carry a third catcher, and then maybe we never have to use MJ behind the plate unless it's an emergency, and his profile can change up a little bit. All of these questions become so much more fascinating because guys are leaving camp. Hopefully, no one gets injured while they're gone. That is a risk inherent with playing an entirely different event where you are easily going harder than spring training. These guys are about to try a whole lot harder than they do down in Arizona, except for the guys playing in Phoenix, Arizona. They're going to be trying just harder than they usually try in the state of Arizona this time of year. But overall, we'll see what they can do. But it's a fascinating discussion for the Royals and for a lot more teams, nonetheless, for so many other parts of the league. But we'll see what happens. The World Baseball Classic is fun. I recommend watching it when it's on. LV Network will probably put on a bunch of the games. It'll be very fun. It's international baseball, which is always a joy. But overall, it's going to leave a lot of questions for the Royals going forward. We'll take another timeout. When we come back, Brendan's going to join me for Everyone Loves the List.
Fulton, it is good to be here with you. I'm going to give you a quick piece of advice. I can't hear you. There we go. You're back now.
You know what would help that, Brendan, and also help our listeners, if I turned my mic on.
Yeah, that would. Okay. I could hear you through the glass, so I knew you were talking to me, but my mic wasn't on.
A little behind the scenes for everybody here. When you're having to start juggling all that stuff, you forget to turn your mic on. Today's list, in honor of our fruits and veggies theme, and Brendan, and it being one of the 3 things he does drink. We're going to do our best lemonades, a topic Brendan and I have briefly discussed off air.
Yeah. Water, milk, lemonade. That is my beverage diet.
That truly is.
That's all.
Hilarious. Brendan, what is your number 4 best flavor of lemonade?
Number 4 for me is strawberry. A little more hit and miss than some of the other flavors, but very solid in general.
I can feel that. Number 4 for me, a good peach lemonade.
Peach.
Okay. I like peach lemonade.
I like
peaches.
That would have been in my next 4 out.
That's
list.
fair. Yeah, that's fair.
Number 3 for me is your just classic, regular yellow lemonade. But there is a caveat. That's number 3. If it's served in a mason jar and you drink it outside in the summertime, it moves to number 2.
That is very fair. Number 3 for me is also the traditional standard yellow lemonade. I would also agree with you. Mason jar outside, it does elevate its spot in the positioning order. But I'm with you. Traditional number 3.
Number 2 is pink lemonade. Let me give you a piece of advice. If you are a waiter or waitress and you work at a restaurant anywhere in the greater Northeast Kansas area, and you see me at your establishment and you say, and I order lemonade, and you say, is pink okay? Don't bother asking. The answer is yes. Always yes.
That's fair. That's
Love
very
lemonade.
fair. Pink lemonade is very good. Number 2 for me, I put strawberry at number 2. I like it. I think it can be hit or miss, but it's so good when it's on point that it takes number 2 for me.
Number 1, raspberry. Raspberry lemonade, the best drink on earth. Don't care how it's prepared. Give it to me at all hours.
Without a doubt, Brendan does love his raspberry lemonade. Number 1 for me is pink lemonade. I love pink lemonade. I'm much like you. Don't ever ask me if pink's okay. Just bring it to me.
Just a little bit sweeter. That little bit of sweetness puts it over the top.
It's just so very good. Brendan, thank you so much for joining for the list, and hopefully you can stick around for some CrossTalk afterwards.
I'll see you in a minute.
We'll take another time out. We got CrossTalk coming up next. Welcome back into Mic'd Up. I bring back in Brendan Dworzinski for CrossTalk. Brendan, thank you for hanging around.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I know you were abandoned, so I figured I would, do something nice and help you out.
That just happens around here. There's more than a few times that I'm just, kind of left to run the ship without the captain. And so far, it stays on course. You never know.
Yeah, kind of Captain Ron vibes coming from Jake.
I wouldn't disagree.
Great movie, by the way. Love Captain Ron. Have you seen that movie?
I have not.
Great movie.
I guess I'll add it to the list.
You go to Cuba, I believe it is, at one point. Yeah, great movie.
Okay.
That come out probably late 90s, I would guess. Kurt Russell's in it. Martin Short.
Oh, that's actually
1992. Okay, early 90s. Yeah, great film.
I'll throw Captain Ron to the list of movies that Jake wants me to watch going forward, including Die Hard and Old School.
Those are probably more considered to be like classics, modern classics, maybe.
Yeah.
Iconic for their genres.
Yeah.
Captain Ron's not.
That's fair.
Good movie.
Good movie. We have some thoughts on our lemonade options here on the Big O Tires text line. From the 913, lemonade with fresh mint sprigs in it.
Wow.
I have not thought about doing that. That also fancies the lemonade up a
Mr.
lot.
Monopoly over here.
Little bougie
Mint
lemonade.
To be fair, I have had lemonade of that ilk before. It's very good.
Yeah.
I'm not ever going to turn something down, although I did, and I might have told you this when we talked about this on the air last. I did at once have a pomegranate lemonade, especially in Disney World. I had a pomegranate lemonade. Not good. No bueno. That was bad. Anything else, though, bring it my way.
Then
Blackberry.
And then
from
the 316, they add that the number one is Chick-fil-A lemonade specifically.
Chick-fil-A is good. So you may have heard, I have type 1 diabetes.
We may have heard.
To mitigate, but not completely eliminate my sugar intake when I go to Chick-fil-A, I will order, and you can actually do this on their app. I didn't know you could until I downloaded it a couple years ago, and now I use it like every week. You can actually get a half diet lemonade, half regular lemonade.
Ooh.
Full size, half as many sugars.
There you go. Can modify the sugar intake.
For those of you who are insulin dependent out there, here's a little tip.
For those of you who are a part of the type 1 diabetes gang, along with Brendan and Mark Andrews.
Jay Cutler, Noah Gray.
Noah Gray, yes, he's a part of the type 1 diabetes clan.
Brett Michaels of Poison. Let's see. I'm trying to think of other famed type 1 diabetics. We were looking these up one day.
We did. I think it was the day at least I found out that Noah Gray was a type 1 diabetic upon a Story of the Star released. I brought it up to you because you just know all these things. And it sent us down a rabbit hole of famous people with type 1 diabetes.
Okay, here you go. Here is Max Domi, plays for the Canadiens, or at least used to.
Okay.
Brandon Morrow, former closer for the Dodgers and Cubs, who stopped playing baseball because he hurt his back bending over to zipper his pants.
Which is just funny.
For those of you who know or at one point knew teenage girls, Nick Jonas.
Okay.
He's got diabetes. Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor.
Really?
Did not know that.
Interesting.
Respect. Shout out to all of us who would literally die if we didn't have insulin.
Yeah. Shout out to all
real
those.
Ones.
Yeah. The real ones know. Brendan, it's obviously you and I here on the show, so we got to lead off with this. The Kansas Jayhawks are Big 12 champions yet again.
Yeah, they are.
For the 17th time under head coach Bill Self, 17 times in 20 seasons, the Kansas Jayhawks are Big 12 champions. You were in the building last night for senior night. I'll start here. Just, was there ever a vibe to you that Texas Tech was ever really in the game? Because I never got that feel at home. Like, just what was that kind of just watching that game to where Tech never went away, but never also really closed a meaningful gap to make a play?
Yeah, it was weird because KU led the entirety of the second half. All 20 minutes, KU led. But KU wasn't really playing winning basketball. They made winning plays at the end. I thought Jalen Wilson did a great job getting downhill. He ends up with a game high in points. Kevin McCullough was obviously awesome because he has been awesome for a month now. DeJuan Harris did his thing. But KU as a whole, for the final 7 minutes, 8 minutes, really, just wasn't playing. Really, you could say most of the second half in general, I think, if you really wanted to stretch it out, wasn't playing a winning brand of basketball. So while it never quite felt like, oh, yeah, KU's going to lose this game, or, oh, man, Texas Tech's got a great chance to win it, it did sort of feel like the reason why KU escaped with the win was because of self-inflicted wounds for Texas Tech. I mean, you go to the free throw line. Of their final 2 trips to the stripe, Texas Tech went 2 of 4 at the line. Completely different game, quite literally, if they make those other 2 free throws. It ties the game. It possibly, if they had made them on both trips, I think would have put them ahead by 1 at one point even. They doinked a couple of those. The play at the end of the game that was the play of the night, the Kevin McCullough scoop up of the loose ball under the offensive basket, and then the lay in. It took a KU lead from 1 to 3, and they held on from there. Really, I mean, it's a great play by McCullough to go after it, to scoop it up, all of that. Davion Harmon really did not try. Like, he really...
Yeah, I noticed that too.
I know a lot of folks, certainly those of a more purple lean, were saying, oh my God, foul on Kevin McCullough, classic Allen Fieldhouse refs. I understand why you thought that from the TV view. If you actually watch, and the KU Athletics team posted this on their social media, if you watch from the back view, if you watch from on the court, essentially, there's very little contact, certainly not enough to draw a foul. But Davion Harmon, I mean, if he actually puts forth 60+% effort on that play, he either A, gets fouled because McCullough actually would have run into him. Harmon really pulled out of the way. Or 2, he actually gets the ball and it doesn't ever end up in Kevin McCullough's hands. Or it wouldn't have been saved by Wilson and Adams before it ended up getting to Kevin McCullough. So I think more than anything, well, not more than anything, but I think KU really did benefit from self-inflicted wounds by a bad Texas Tech team, or at least relatively bad. And look, you can say fairly, KU would have lost to most other teams in the Big 12 last night. Probably would have been able to hold on against Oklahoma, and probably would have been able to hold on against Iowa State. But you play TCU, that scrappy, max effort TCU team, KU probably loses that game if they play the exact same caliber of game that they ended up playing. But hell, you know what? A, you don't apologize for wins, and B, KU's beaten all these teams already. True. KU has already beaten all those teams that, well, if they had played Baylor, they would have lost. Well, they beat Baylor last time out. They've now won 7 games in a row, so you don't apologize for it. Ugly win. That's 2 ugly wins in a row, but hey, whatever it takes to win the conference title, to get into hopefully the number 1 seed in the Big 12 tournament, and hopefully some geographic preferential treatment in the NCAA tournament. Doesn't matter how you get there, just get there.
And I'm with you right there. It doesn't winning pretty versus winning ugly, they equal the exact same in the win column at the end of the day. It's sticking with senior night, though. The senior speeches, you've been around for a couple of these. You've seen a few ones getting done. It always hits different with some different guys. Just what were the vibes with some of the send-offs that Wilson and McCullough tried to give last night? Just what was the feel for the senior speeches and that nice little part to end the night after such a big win and winning another conference championship? How did it feel hearing those two guys get to kind of wrap up their home careers?
Bill Self freaking loves Kevin McCullough. He has been lauding him ever since media day, ever since he committed out of the portal. He has just talked him up and up and up, and especially recently when he's been playing his best basketball of the year. And that happened again, usually for guys who have only been around for a year. You know, I think back to Jalen Coleman-Lands last year. And obviously McCullough this year plays a much bigger role than JCL played last year. But it was, hey, we really appreciated having this guy. He brought a lot of experience, and he makes a bunch of business propositions to us. It's very funny. All right, here's Jalen Coleman-Lands. Last night, there was a lot of he's a bad man, and we knew we had to have him in the portal, and we wanted him so badly. Look how well he's playing, et cetera, et cetera. Bill Self loves Kevin McCullough, and I understand why. There's a reason why at Media Day all the way back in October, Bill Self said, this guy, like, he's the perfect fit. We knew he was the perfect fit for our roster, and I think that's pretty much true. The Jalen Wilson one, that was obviously the big one. A lot of fans like McCullough. There's still some haters out there. I find that to be very strange at this point. But
agreed.
I mean, Wilson's been around for a long time, 4 years with the program. Obviously had that horrific injury his freshman year when he had to end up redshirting when he broke his ankle. Had the suspension going into last season, which I think very clearly messed with him for the entire first half of last year. But he has been such a rock. He is so tough. Means a lot to the program. Self said that he thinks Jalen Wilson means as much to KU as Frank Mason, Devontae Graham, Ochai Agbaji. I don't know if I'd go that far. And that's not to criticize Jalen Wilson. I mean, he's an all-time KU great, but I don't know, man. Those dudes hold a pretty special place in a lot of hearts. But just to be mentioned in that group, he's going to be, like all those guys, Big 12 Player of the Year. That's pretty special. And yeah, it was an emotional night. They had videos, and KU Athletics tweeted this out too. They had videos that were voiced by their parents, both Jalen's parents and Kevin's parents, where they talked about, oh, you're such a great son. You've been on such a journey. We're so proud of you, et cetera. That was probably the most emotional part of the entire night. And the guys were all tearing up about it. It was cool. I love senior night. I love it and the emotion of it. And when you're a fan, I mean, you see these guys grow up to a degree. I mean, Jalen Wilson was 18 years old when he got to KU, and now he's literally an adult. Like that's a lot. And we have seen that year by year. It's not just his hair growing up. It's, his entire life, his entire career.
It is. And speaking, and I'm with you, senior night's one of my favorite times in the calendar for teams that I either enjoy or cover every year. It's just a great moment. And speaking of senior night for another team here in the Big 12, K-State has their senior night this evening. They take on Oklahoma. The most notable guys who are going to be honored this evening are Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson. Just what do you think the emotions are going to be like in that building tonight? Because K-State was really outside looking in, trying to win the Big 12 title. They technically had a chance until last night, though it would have taken KU losing 2 kind of crazy games and then other things falling their way. But they still kind of had more to play for. Now they still have some. They can still finish higher for seeding in the Big 12 tournament, but not much. They're still playing for NCAA tournament seeding, but not much else. Just combining that with senior night, what do you think kind of would be the vibe tonight as K-State kind of honors 2 great players for them this year, and they wrap up the home part of what has been just a magical season so far in Manhattan?
No, I think it'll be a blast for people there. I know Dan is going. He'll be there in Manhattan tonight to cover it all. Look, it's been an incredible season, and you get to this point, and I think most K-State fans, especially with the way that they've been playing over their last couple of games. I know they went through that skid when they lost 4 of 5, 5 of 7, but they've now won 3 games in a row. That includes a ranked win over Baylor. They should be able to take care of business against a bad Oklahoma team tonight. I hope that they go nuts for both Keontae Johnson and for Marquise Noel, because the two of them have meant, and in different ways, they've taken different paths to get there, but they have meant so much to the turnaround of this program. Keontae, we remember going back to the offseason, he was one of the last players in this class, if not the last, to sign with K-State, really close to the start of the school year. And we had spent so much time talking about, this roster is better. We don't know how they're going to mesh together. First time with Jerome Tang being a head coach, so who knows how it's all going to fit. It looks like they don't really have a go-to guy. Now, granted, it looks like Noel could have become that anyway, even without Keontae there, but obviously things change, different defensive attention when one's on the floor, not the other. You see where I'm going with that. But it really felt like, okay, they don't have a true alpha, a true A guy, but they got plenty of good players. They'll be competitive. They should be in the hunt for a tournament spot. Keontae Johnson is that guy, and he has been that guy all year long. And we knew that the second he committed. He was preseason All-American, preseason SEC Player of the Year before he had the unfortunate heart issue during that last season he was at Florida. I mean, how could you... I don't think you could possibly understate the importance he has played in this turnaround this year for K-State, to have that surefire go-to bucket getter that K-State has been severely lacking for years. To go get that guy and to have him play at an all Big 12 first team level all year, to be a good leader, to buy in instantly, because that's one of the hard parts with transfers, is knowing that they are going to buy in right away, especially with their role changing, either getting bigger or possibly getting smaller. And he's bought in. And Marquise Noel, I mean, that's one of the best turnaround stories in all of college basketball.
It's one of them.
Certainly in the Big 12. But really in all of college basketball, he has flashes of greatness, but they're few and far between with splashes of, wow, he is way too confident for his own good. Remember that shot? Who was it against last year? He took a logo 3 with like a minute. It was Iowa State.
It was the Iowa State game. It's what I've pointed back to for forever in identifying the turnaround, because they perfect chance to drive to the rim. Man just stands around for 20 seconds, pulls up a logo 3. I think, far too confident for his own good. Yeah. And then his change has been, I think it's the best thing Jerome Tang to identify how great his coaching has been this year. You got Keontae Johnson, Marquise Noel, to buy into, yes, you can take some of these crazy shots and you can make them, but this team and you are better when you just play in the system. You just play together. And it's turned him into the best assisting guard in the Big 12.
It's been awesome to watch.
It's been great to see, and I hope all those guys have a lot of fun tonight. Small little last Big 12 note here. TCU, Texas also playing tonight. If Texas loses, KU gets sole possession of the Big 12. TCU is still trying to do what they can to kind of finish their season off on a strong point. Just any thoughts for you for TCU, Texas tonight?
So DeJuan Harris last night said, I believe this was on KU radio, said he wants Texas to win tonight because he wants KU to be locked in for Saturday. No, we've already got the title. We can half-ass it. Doesn't want any of that. They want him to be locked in. And part of me genuinely agrees with that. And I know that sounds mega homer of me, because the other half is, no, just win the title. Don't do this whole, we want the toughest opponent. Just win it. Take it however you can get it. You don't want to share the title. I understand that. But by the same token, I've got my heart set on KU getting to Kansas City and being in the Midwest Regional for the NCAA tournament. That's going to take as many wins as possible. And if to be locked in for that game on Saturday afternoon against Texas, if that's going to take there being sole possession of the conference title on the line, so be it. There were, by the way, today, or as of yesterday at least, if not today. No, Lenardi updated it today, so did Andy Katz. Both NCAA.com and ESPN have moved KU to the number 2 overall seed, the number 2, number 1
Interesting.
seed. And that would put them in the Midwest, which would mean
Would be nice.
T-Mobile Center for weekend number 2.
Would be nice.
I understand that the last time KU was in the tournament in Kansas City, it did not go especially well.
Nope.
They were knocked out in the Elite Eight by Oregon in a game that still haunts me to this day. It was the final game of my senior year. We were as students, we were in the studio together. I think
you and I were in
night,
the studio together.
Yeah, that was not fun.
That sucked.
And I believe I told you guys, like, yeah, we'll do this real fast and go home. Like, no one wants to talk about this game.
It was me, you, and another mutual friend of ours, Nick Springer, were there. And yeah, you basically said, guys, we're gonna finish this up real quick and get out of here. None of us were mentally and emotionally in a state of like, we want to talk about this for forever.
No, absolutely.
We wanted to go home.
That.
We were so done.
And the last time it was in KC period was in 2019, if I remember correctly.
I believe so.
And that's when KU went to Salt Lake City and got bounced by Auburn.
Which also really sucked.
That was unpleasant. I was there for that one. Low-key, Salt Lake City, I've said this before, kind of a nice city. That week, not especially pleasant with the way it ended.
That week, incredible bummer. Last thing I want to get you out here on real quick here, Brendan, some Chiefs discussion. I talked about this earlier. Veteran wide receivers they could take in. I got 2 names for you. Give me your interest level for the Chiefs if they could make them come in on a 1-year, some kind of cost control deal. Kenny Golladay, Robert Woods.
Kenny Golladay, I'm a 1 out of 10. I'm not interested.
Okay.
I think maybe he picks up the energy a little bit, but it was such a sour note in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Let someone else that doesn't have nearly as much on the line take that flyer. Let Houston go after him. Let Tennessee go after him. I'm staying away if I'm the Chiefs. Woods, I'd put it a 5. I think he's probably still got something left in the tank. Hopefully he's better with an extra year removed from that injury he suffered back in 2021. I don't know, man. I just don't love the fit. I can understand it. You need some wide receiver help, but I'd put it at a mediocre 4 or 5. If you brought him in, I wouldn't complain, but I'm not clamoring for it either.
Both those guys were kind of my top 2 thoughts, at least for now, for cuts with Juju. But I still say the top option is you just get Juju back in the building. That's the top option.
Doubt.
Just get Juju back in the building. But we'll see what they do going forward. New league year begins March 15th. Tag has to be decided on March 7th. Best time of the year, NFL offseason. Brendan, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
I will talk to you guys coming up at 3 o'clock for 580 Sports Talk.
That you will. That'll do it for the 1 o'clock hour of My Tip. We have more great stuff coming up here, including Kellis Robinett coming up in the 2 o'clock hour. Welcome into the final hour of Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. Fulton Caster with you. I thank you for joining me this afternoon. Of course, again, it is just me with Jake LeBon in Kansas City for the MIAA tournament. Washburn is taking on Missouri Western. Speaking of that, we have a final score. Missouri Western Griffins defeat the Washburn Ichabod 69-63. Washburn's season is now officially over with the 69-63 loss. Andrew Orr led the Ichabods with 19 points and 11 rebounds. The Bods got within 3 late in the game with about 30 seconds left, but just could not seal the deal. They only shot 39% from the field. They were 4 of 16 from 3, and they had 18 turnovers. The Ichabods just were not able to do enough to get it done. So with that being said, Jake will be back tomorrow with Washburn not advancing the MIAA tournament. He's wrapping up post-game now on our sister station, Country 1069. Coming up at the 2 o'clock hour, it's Heavy K-State. K-State has Senior Day coming up tonight for Banner Coliseum against Oklahoma. We're going to break down that game. We're going to look at it. It's going to be a lot of fun coming up in this one, and we're also looking at some latest news around the NFL as well. You can join in on the conversation, as always, on the Big Red Tires text line, 785-272-9429, or in the live comment section of our YouTube page. Go to youtube.com, go to Sportsland 580, which is our YouTube page. Give us a subscribe if you haven't, and you can also hop in on the live comment section of the YouTube chat as well. Speaking of which, our buddy Vance in the chat. Vance, in case you want to know, it is my Royals KC Connect hat is what I'm wearing today. Vance was curious because couldn't see the logo on the hat. It's the Royals Connect hat for those of you watching. It's one of my favorite hats. I love it so very much. But to kick off this hour of the program, we bring in our good friend, Kellis Robinett, covers Kansas State Wildcats for the Wichita Eagle and the Kansas City Star. You can follow Kellis on Twitter at Kellis Robinett. And Kellis, senior night has arrived, and I just want to know, we'll get off here, where in your mind does senior night fit on the yearly activities that are going to come? Like, when you see the schedule released, when you're thinking about the things you're looking forward to for a basketball or even a football season, where does senior night, senior day, where does this activity fall in the rankings of things you look forward to as you cover things throughout the year?
Oh, it's probably up there on the higher end, especially when you got some good players you get to know and see them do fun things like Jacob Pullen kissing the court for the last time, or Skylar Thompson running off the football field for one last hurrah in a Kansas State uniform. It can be a cool deal, maybe not as big a deal here in Manhattan as it is in Lawrence and some other places where they let players give speeches and stuff when they're done with the games. But yeah, it's a big deal and a special time for these players and fans to thank each other for all that they've done.
I know with senior night coming up tonight, I know Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson will likely be honored by the team as well. Are guys like Tyke Green, Desi Sills, and all of them, will they also be getting some kind of an honoring or a mention before the game starts? Do we know kind of the full list of guys? Because I know Jerome Tangen mentioned, get there a little bit early. We're going to honor our guys before tip. Any idea of the full list of guys we're going to be honored a little bit before tip off tonight?
Oh, I mean, it'll be all their seniors plus all their senior managers. I don't know if they'll honor, senior cheerleaders and stuff too, but not pre-game. So you're looking at, at every senior on the roster. You'll have Keontae, you'll have Marquise, Desi, Bebe, Nate Aubrey, the walk-on, Tyke Green. If you're a senior on this team, you're going to get honored tonight. So it'll be a fun time.
It really will. It's always nice to see those guys getting honored and getting these little moments of attention and things like that. Turning to the game itself tonight, Oklahoma is the team being welcomed to town tonight for senior night at Bramlage Coliseum. The last two times these teams met was back on Valentine's Day, 79-65. Oklahoma won in a game that K-State just didn't look like they had legs. And that was kind of their rough road period where Jerome Tang has said, he maybe pushed the guys too hard and maybe, that they were just kind of out of it, kind of exhausted. With that in mind, just on kind of a broad view, do you think there's much stock you can take from that first game against Oklahoma when trying to predict what you might see tonight for K-State and OU round two? Or because of the freshness of this team, because they're kind of playing so much better from that last loss to the Sooners, does this just scream to you brand new ball game? Don't really look at much what happened down in Norman.
I think you definitely have to look at it and say this could affect this game because Oklahoma, really, since Porter Moser got there, hasn't been a great matchup for Kansas State. When Lon Kruger was roaming the sidelines in Oklahoma, you could pretty much always count on the Sooners coming to die in Bramlage Coliseum. They lost 9 straight here, and I don't know if he had an affinity for his alma mater or what, but he just had all kinds of trouble beating Kansas State when he was at Oklahoma. Not the case now. Moser is 3-0 against Kansas State since he joined the Sooners. He knows how to play against this team, and you look at that and say, well, he just beat Kansas State by 14 in their lone meeting this season. So you got to at least give him a shot here tonight. But I do agree with you that that last game was maybe an aberration for Kansas State. It was kind of rock bottom for this team. It was their 5th loss in the span of 8 games, their 4th loss in the span of 5 games, where they just kind of had that mid-season swoon that every Big 12 team seems to have at some point this season. Even the league champ Kansas lost 3 straight games at one point. So that's kind of where Kansas State was at that point. Second game of a back-to-back road trip, tied at halftime, end up getting run off the court by 14 in the second half. So, yeah, legs hurt them. Location of the game hurt them. They'll be fresh this game. It'll be in Manhattan. So I certainly think Kansas State wins, but I don't think that they'll blow them out or anything. I think Oklahoma's a tough matchup for them.
Speaking of that last matchup and how tough the matchup with Oklahoma could be, Marquise only had 14 points in that matchup. He was 4-13 from the floor. Keontae Johnson even only had 14 points, also had 4 fouls in that matchup as well. Mainly focusing on Marquise Noel here, do you think there was anything Oklahoma did or that they do well that really flustered Marquise Noel that first time that you would look for K-State to try and change around to give him a bit of a better matchup and to try and perform better in the rematch?
That's a good question. I know that Oklahoma really looked at Marquise Noel in that game and pretty much said, if we're going to lose to Kansas State, it's going to be because somebody else beats us. And they did some interesting things on him. He shoots 2 for 9 from 3-point range, has 4 turnovers, a little bit different than what we've seen from him the last couple games. So they definitely had a good defensive plan for him. I wonder what they do in the rematch, but I will say that game was just kind of strange from Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson's vantage point. Like I mentioned earlier, the entire team was on a losing streak. Those 2 guys in particular weren't playing all that great. I think that night they came out and tried to do it a little bit differently. Like Keontae Johnson normally drives to the basket for a lot of shots. That night he was a jump shooter. Marquise was coming off a string of games where he committed too many turnovers, and he didn't look too interested in taking any chances that game. So I don't know. I think there's a little bit of everything. They played badly. They played cautiously. Oklahoma played well. But that's the beauty of the Big 12 double round robin. Everybody gets to play each other twice. And one night you can be bad, one night you can be good. And that's how we end up with some of the results that we do.
Keontae Johnson's another player who obviously he's really picked it up since that losing streak, including it wasn't flashy, in my opinion, in the box score when they beat Oklahoma State down in Stillwater. They won. Keontae Johnson only had 17 points and 5 rebounds, but he's seeming to get back to kind of that alpha bulldog mentality of playing with that confidence, maybe attacking more, but also using his three-point jump shot a lot better. Kind of going to a bit of a broader view, looking at this 3-game winning streak for Kansas State here. What have you seen out of Keontae Johnson that has made him kind of revert back to that talented scorer, talented alpha dog kind of mentality, to where he might not always be leading K-State and scoring at the end of the night, but does seem to be an engine that makes them go? Is there anything you've seen out of Keontae Johnson that's really has shown why he's really improved as of late?
Well, I mean, obviously kudos to him for playing a lot better these last couple games. But I think a lot of credit goes to Marquise Noel, his teammates, and Jerome Tang as well. There when Kansas State was losing and Keontae wasn't scoring at the rate he was early in the season. It's just because he was doing things that put him, didn't put him in situations to succeed. He was attacking the basket the wrong ways, committing a lot of fouls, just committing too many turnovers, being a little bit reckless out there. These last couple games, they've done a good job of knowing when to be aggressive with them and knowing when to be precautious with them. They've done a great job of spotting them up in the corner for open looks, and that's why he's hit a bunch of open threes these last couple games. He really came through for him at Oklahoma State with 3 3-pointers, drilled 2 against Baylor. And once you do that, teams really have to honor what you can do, both as a driver and as a shooter. I think there for a while, teams were tagging off him and saying, he's not going to get the ball in great shooting situations, so let's just protect the paint, not let him get a bunch of easy buckets there. Now that he's making shots from the outside again, it's opened up everything for him. And he's been a little bit smarter about when to attack and when to pull up and take jumpers. So it's kept him out of foul trouble. I would say all those reasons have helped him play better recently.
Kellis Robinett is my guest, covers K-State Wildcats for the Wichita Eagle and the Kansas City Star. You can follow Kellis on Twitter at Kellis Robinett. Another change, Kellis, that K-State has made as part of this 3-game winning streak, Desi Sills has been interjected into the starting lineup. How do you think that's affected the way K-State's been playing as of late? And has that been part of the spark that's been helping out also Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson specifically?
Sorry, say that again. Which player?
Desi Sills has been added to the Desi Sills being added to the starting lineup here more and more as of late. Do you think that's helped out Keontae Johnson and Marquise Noel and the team as a whole?
I do think it has. There for a while when it was David Gasson in the starting lineup, that's you don't want to say it's just one player who's hurting a team, and I'm definitely not saying that here, but that's when they had their mid-season swoon, was when he was in the lineup. They switch things up and go smaller, more energy, and when they are bringing in bigs, it's all off the bench. I think that's helped everybody out. These last couple of games, you've seen improved play from David Gasson, Ishmael Massoud, Bebe Ugiola. They've all come in and had nice moments. And instead of just sticking an extra big in there to stick an extra big in there, they're actually playing to all those guys' strength. And Desi Sills, he's a spark plug. I thought he was a great six-man coming off the bench, but he's done a lot for this team as a starter as well. I think more than anything, he's helped them defensively, which is kind of weird to think about because early on in the season, he was really just nothing more than a get in there and score kind of microwave player. But I think his energy and the smaller size and quickness that he brings to the court, with him at the 3, Keontae at the 4, and Naquan at the 5. They're not as tall as other teams, but they do have a lot of length, a lot of athleticism, a lot of speed. So I think that's definitely one reason why these last 3 games, the teams Kansas State have played have scored 55, 65, 68. Nobody getting to 70. And when they were losing, teams were pretty much always in the 70s. TCU even, Kansas even reached 90 on them. So I think that's helped as much as anything.
Looking at the defensive marks, I think that's a great point, Kel, especially with the way they've played defensively with those 55, 65, and 68. With K-State playing so much more increased defensive intensity and the way they've played these last 3 games defensively, we always know the Wildcats will usually find a way to score. Against most teams, K-State's going to find a way to put up points because that's what they've done all year. What do you think increasing their defensive intensity and defensive prowess does to the ceiling of this K-State team? How much more of a threat does it make them, and not just say the postseason tournament in Kansas City for the Big 12 tournament, but in this NCAA tournament coming up, how much more of a threat of an overall better team does this raise K-State ceiling to be when they're playing this well, locked in, and intensified on the defensive end?
Well, I mean, I think it gives them, you know, I don't know how much more ceiling, but definitely more ceiling because offense is kind of a fickle thing, especially in a single elimination tournament setting like you get at the Big 12 tournament, the NCAA tournament. If all you are offense, if all you are like what we've seen from like Arizona last year, Baylor this year, you come out in the game, you're not making your shots, you got nothing else to go to. That's what happened with Oklahoma when they were great with Buddy Hield and all the shooters they had. They get to a Final Four. Everybody's thinking that they can win it. They have an off shooting night and they lose by 30 points out of nowhere. So you can't just rely on any one thing. I could say the exact same thing about defense. Like, you really trust Tennessee in a tournament setting? Even if they hold another team to 50 points, they could go cold and not win. You got to have both. And defense travels a little bit better than offense. So if Kansas State is going to come out here and play at a high level on defense, then that opens up a lot of new avenues for them. Because we've seen what they can do when they're hot. 116 points in the game at Texas, 97 points in the game at Baylor. They turn around and sweep Baylor this season, actually the highest scoring team in the league. So that shows that they can win shootouts. We've also seen that they can win, some rock fights. So that, to me, is a sign of a team that can go far in the tournament, a team that can win in a bunch of different ways. They're not locked into any one thing.
K-State, at one point, it was a far-flung opportunity, but before last night and the result with KU beating Texas Tech, K-State had a chance where they could have been part of a 4-way tie for the Big 12 championship. Now that kind of high-in-the-sky dream is completely gone. They're not playing for a Big 12 championship anymore this season. They're playing for seeding in the Big 12 championship, and they're playing for seeding in the NCAA tournament, and then also just general pride to finish on a winning record. Do you think that there is any chance for a letdown in intensity now that the potential for a Big 12 title is off the board? Or do you think Jerome Ting's still going to have this team playing hard and playing locked in these final 2 games of the regular season, no matter what they overall could be playing for?
I don't think there's much to worry about tonight. Playing at home, Kansas State has been almost unbeatable this season. Texas is the only team to beat them, and they needed a big second-half comeback to do it. I don't see Kansas State letting down in this situation against a team that already beat them on senior night, regardless of what's on the line. I think they want to come out, win this game one more time in front of the fans, and have a great send-off right here for all these guys. So I'm not worried at all about a letdown tonight. I am a little less confident in their chances going to West Virginia. I'm not saying that they'll let down in that game or anything, but let's say they win tonight. Kansas State will have won 4 straight games to clinch their spot, a high seed in the Big 12 tournament, a high seed in the NCAA tournament. You'll be traveling across the country to play a West Virginia team that badly needs to win that game to bolster its NCAA tournament case. If you're looking for a letdown spot, that's the one that it looks like to me. When Kansas State got off to a great start this season in the Big 12 play, they won their first 4 games and then just got smoked at TCU because that's the game the Horned Frogs really needed. And Kansas State, was kind of playing with house money at that point. Then they reset and came home and beat Kansas and Texas Tech. So I'm kind of looking at that game at West Virginia. I think that's going to be a tough one for them for that reason. It's just hard for anybody to win 5 straight games in this league, and that's what Kansas State would be trying to do in that situation. So if you're wary of a letdown spot, I think it's there, not tonight. But then, I've been this team has surprised me in a lot of other situations this season, so maybe they'll come out guns a-blazing and win by 15 on the road too. Who knows?
You never know. You truly do not know when it comes to also this crazy league. All right, Kellis, my final two questions for you, my two for the road. First things first, Selection Sundays coming up on March 12th. When the bracket's revealed, what seed are the Kansas State Wildcats in the NCAA tournament?
I think they get a 3 seed. That's where I'm going right now.
That considering, as I've said all year, considering where our expectations were when this team started this year, a 3 seed, tremendous success if they get that spot. My final question here for you, Kellis, it is senior night. Senior night is an emotional time, and Jerome Tang is a guy that wears his emotions on his sleeve. How quickly do you think Jerome Tang begins shedding tears during the pregame festivities for the seniors tonight?
Oh boy. I mean, instantly, maybe.
I'm with you.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, some coaches treat senior day as a bigger deal than others. I think he's really going to be all in for this one. And, I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see some waterworks right away.
Wouldn't surprise me at all with the way he cares for these kids, and it's a great thing to see. Kellis, have fun tonight at Bramlage Coliseum for senior night. Hopefully it's a nice big win for you guys, for everyone at K-State, and you get to cover a nice fun game. But thanks for talking, man. Have a good one tonight.
All right, you too. Thanks for having me on.
Kellis Robinett of the Wichita Eagle and the Kansas City Star. Always fun to have Kellis on here. Yeah, no, I don't know if there'd be any. I wish you could just be like, how quickly would Jerome Tang cry? The first player that comes out. And honestly, if Jerome Tang does any sort of like a kickoff introduction to start the festivities after the game, I put money right there that Jerome Tang begins crying. And I'm saying that as like a positive thing. He cares so much for these guys and for these players. It's just a beautiful thing to see. And it's one of my favorite things about Coach Tang is how much he cares for his players, how much he wants them to succeed, how much he wants to not only them to be good basketball players, but good men and good people and members of the community. All those things just, I'm a KU guy through and through. That's what I forever will be for the rest of time. But I can't lie. I love Jerome Tang. I love what he does with this program, and I wish him nothing but success in every place he is, whether that's K-State for his entire career or that's K-State and somewhere else. I just hope Jerome Tang is nothing but success because he's one of the true great individuals and human beings we have in the coaching world. But it should be a fun one for Bramlage Coliseum coming up tonight. K-State is going to take on Oklahoma. I have not double-checked on what that tip-off is going to be, so I'm going to pull that up right now because I honestly can't remember what that tip-off is. Let's find it here. 7 o'clock. That is a 7 o'clock tip for K-State in Oklahoma. For those of you not going to the game, it is on ESPN Plus this evening. I know it stinks. The usual retread of what's going on here. But K-State in Oklahoma will be on ESPN Plus this evening. That matchup from Bramlage Coliseum. It'll be interesting. I'll be honest, I did not fully realize that Porter Moser, undefeated against the Wildcats. He's 1-0 against Jerome Tang. See if K-State can hand him that first loss as Oklahoma head coach against K-State coming up in this matchup tonight from Bramlage Coliseum. No matter what, it will be a fun one. Follow Sports on 580 on Twitter tonight for updates. Our man Dan Lucero will be there tonight at Bramlage Coliseum. You can follow the Sports on 580 on Twitter or follow Dan at Dan Lucero Show on Twitter. I'll have some updates on the personal account as well for the matchup tonight from Bramlage Coliseum. And of course, also another reason to subscribe to our YouTube page, Sports on 580 on YouTube. Dan will have an instant reaction recap video tonight live from Bramlage Coliseum as well. No matter what, should be fun. We'll break down that game more in full coming up later on the show. We got time out to take. We got more of Mic'd Up coming up next. Royals are in spring training action at the moment, back here on 580 WIBW. Taking on the Colorado Rockies at their spring training facility. It is 1-0 Colorado in the top of the second. Brady Singer got the start today. So far has gone 1 inning, gave 2 hits in that 1 run. He walked a batter, but also struck out 2. Fun part about this lineup is Nick Lofton replaced Hunter Dozier today. Dozier was not feeling well, is what he said. Anytime I don't have to watch Hunter Dozier play baseball, I am incredibly happy, is all I will say. Truly, truly enjoyable. The best things I can do. But who knows? But the Royals doing that. We're ever so closer to Royals getting to some opening day baseball action. Opening day will be up on March 30th. Got a lot of questions about giving away tickets for opening day. We will start our Royals giveaways here probably in a couple of weeks. We don't have an official date that we may start giving some away. All I can say is keep listening. We're going to do our Royals ticket giveaways as always. But no, we do not at this moment have any set time that we will be doing any sort of a Royals ticket giveaway for opening day specifically coming up. But as always, throughout the year, we're going to give away Royals tickets as often as we feel like and as often as we can. Last year, we did it every time after the Royals won. I don't know if we're going to do that this year again, mainly because I think they'll win a lot more, and we can only give away so many tickets. At the same time, though, we're going to keep doing this ticket giveaways, so just keep listening, keep an eye out on all of our Mic'd Up social channels and the different things for the show each day, and we'll let you know when it comes around when we'll start giving away tickets for opening day. I wanted to take a broader view at the NFL for a minute here while we have some time. I know when we talk NFL all the time, we're mainly talking about the Chiefs, and that's important. But I wanted to compare and contrast a very important Chiefs thing with a problem the rest of the league is having. And that is ESPN put out a story this morning kind of trying to predict all the quarterbacks that teams are going to have this year. A lot of teams will be dealing with returning quarterbacks. The Chiefs obviously being one. They have 15. They have Patrick Mahomes. Why would they ever change quarterbacks? But there are a lot of quarterbacks who could move teams or could stay on the same one. Lamar Jackson's out there. There's the Aaron Rodgers saga to deal with. Those are for the two big names. You know, Daniel Jones is out there as well. Those are probably the three biggest names for could leave their current team, will probably play for their current team. Aaron Rodgers emerged from his darkness retreat a few days ago and has said today he will make an announcement on a decision soon. Whatever that means, I don't care. I think I will say, normally Aaron Rodgers says things and I ignore them, but Aaron Rodgers says something today that I think is important to everybody out there. If you think Aaron Rodgers said, if you think he's being a diva, just ignore him. And I completely agree. That's why I mainly ignore what he says. Like, I notice it because everyone tweets about it, but like, I rarely will tweet about Aaron Rodgers or make comments about Aaron Rodgers because I really don't care. I'm not one of those that would like obsess and fawn over everything he does. I think Aaron made a good point. If you don't like what he's doing, I think he's being a diva, just don't pay attention to him. For once, Aaron kind of made a good point. But either way, ESPN and their insiders did predict that Jackson, Rodgers, and Jones will all play for their same teams going forward. And I would agree with that. Rodgers, if he plays, is going to go back to Green Bay. I don't foresee them trading him anywhere. Like, it would require making that contract work that he signed and all this other stuff. And I think it makes a lot of sense for them to trade him because they're getting so close to the end. You want to prepare for the future, yada, yada, yada. Same time, it would really surprise me. It really would. So I think you get another year of Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. Lamar Jackson and Daniel Jones are simple. I think Lamar, they're not going to come to an agreement on an extension, but he is not going to be allowed to walk. So he'll probably play this year under the franchise tag. Daniel Jones, Jake and I had a long debate about this. They're going to play him 1 year under the franchise tag. He's going to get a lot of money under the franchise tag. I think it's like $30-some million for quarterbacks. But I think Brian Dable is going to want to see 1 more year of Daniel Jones. He had his best year as an NFL player. Granted, it wasn't a great year. It was pretty good. He didn't turn the ball over nearly as much, contributed plays on the ground and through the air, and he was game manager. That's what he did. I think Dable's going to want to see what he can do with him going forward. Because remember, Brian Dable's the guy who took Josh Allen from someone who couldn't complete a pass to like a 66% pass completion guy and nearly an MVP. Not saying Daniel Jones can do that. I don't think he can. But I get why the Giants are going to do that. So those are the 3 big names that everyone's going to probably come back. There's a few other random miscellaneous things throughout there that are less important. Then, though, we get to the veteran quarterbacks, 2 in particular, of Jimmy Garoppolo and Derek Carr. They're the 2 big veteran quarterbacks on the market and seeing what they're going to do. They have been taking visits. Derek Carr just set up interviews with the Saints, the Panthers, and the Jets. It's the second time he'll meet with the Saints and the Jets. First time he's going to meet with the Carolina Panthers. I've said all along, I think the Jets are probably the best landing spot for Derek Carr. I think that's where he'll go. It'll make sense the best for him and all those different things and what he's going to try and do. Jimmy Garoppolo is another excellent question about what he's going to do. What that is, I do not know. But we'll see going forward. ESPN predicts that the Jets will have Jimmy Garoppolo and the Panthers will have Derek Carr. Another veteran quarterback not getting allowed to run. They also predict that the Saints will have Baker Mayfield as their quarterback. Who knows? We'll see. And then just a myriad of teams will roll with a rookie quarterback this year, including the Las Vegas Raiders projected to try and roll out Will Levis at their starting quarterback. Along with, I believe, other people have been with me on this, I think Will Levis, the perfect Raider quarterback, going to just be a lot of big physical traits and probably flame out due to poor coaching. We'll see. But that's what happens for them. Well, I want to bring up quarterbacks, though. One, Chiefs fans never take it for granted that your quarterback situation is solid. Look at all these teams, what they have to do. Think about the Panthers. If they could finally get to Derek Carr, that's their best option, is finding Derek Carr off the street while still trying to solve their stuff. The Jets having to go to Jimmy Garoppolo. All these teams that are in the, look at just in the division with Russell Wilson and the Broncos and even the Raiders and maybe Will Levis or anything they have to do. They're looking for a quarterback, period. It should never be taken for granted when you have the quarterback situation solved. So that's the biggest thing. There's also been some reports coming out today of the Chiefs that they might be in the veteran quarterback market because they need a backup. Because Chad Henne, anything is possible, is retired. He officially announced his retirement after the Super Bowl and getting another ring. I would be interested to see if the Chiefs explore any veteran backup quarterback options because I've been under the impression it's just Shane Buechele's job. Like they liked him enough to keep him on the 53 all last year and not risk losing him to anyone poaching off the practice squad. If you're willing to do all of that, why would you then have him not be your backup next year. Now, I could see them bringing in a veteran quarterback to compete against Buechele and make sure he's still improving. And then if Buechele has shown he's kind of plateaued and he isn't the guy, maybe then you finally make your decision. It's that Buechele's cut. I don't know what they're going to do there. But the Chiefs really like Shane Buechele and like what he does. So I have to imagine that that'll be their veteran quarterback option, their backup quarterback option going forward, which does mean it'll be a little more dicey if Mahomes does miss any time, because you don't have Chad Henne coming in to stop the bleeding. You don't have when Matt Moore came in to stop the bleeding and played well. It'd be Shane Buechele, a guy that doesn't have reps as a starting quarterback in the NFL, a guy who has not had a bunch of time in the NFL. So we'll see what the Chiefs do, but I just wanted to take a minute, look at the quarterback situation in the NFL, to both take a note on a few of them, but also just remind you Chiefs fans out there, be so incredibly happy. And we all experienced it. We were these teams. The Chiefs were these teams at one point, hunting and trying to find a quarterback solution, hunting and trying to find the right guy. And the Chiefs have them, and it does make their life immensely easier going forward. The fact that their quarterback situation is completely and entirely solved because they have one Patrick LeVon Mahomes under center. Makes their lives so much easier than it ever could be. We'll take another time out. We'll look at some Big 12 hoops coming up tonight across the league, coming up next. The Big O's Tires text line brings up an interesting thought for Chiefs backup quarterback. From the 785, Carson Wentz for KC backup, question mark? Texter, I'm not going to blame you for bringing up that thought. I think it's honestly, to a legitimate feeling, a legitimate question to ask. Carson Wentz got cut yet again by the Washington Commanders to save them a bunch of money. He currently does not have a home. Ain't nobody going to make him the starting quarterback anymore. Or at least I wouldn't think so. He is done as a starting quarterback because he's been so bad. I'm not inherently against Carson Wentz as a backup option. However, he is not my first choice because even in a one-game sample, he's just not good anymore. Like, he's just cooked, man. He makes very stupid decisions. Decision-making is the biggest thing for me in Wentz, is that he just doesn't make smart decisions. And in a much more limited sample size, that both can be minimized and exacerbated. So that's where I go there. Though I'm not going to sit here and say, oh my goodness, the Chiefs signed Carson Wentz to be their backup. I'm going to take pitchforks to Brett Veach. Like, no, I give them benefit of the doubt. And if Veach and Reed think that they can make it work in very limited time, sure. I just don't think there's value there. The other part is Wentz is reportedly not a great locker room guy. And I know I just went on a thing earlier on the show about how you can trust Andy Reid and the KC culture to kind of get guys in line. That works best with younger players. Like, that works best for younger guys, usually, not for older players. And I just feel that Carson is just too far past that point. I don't know. He just turned 30, so he's going through a year. But, I mean, I just don't know if there's enough there for him to be a winning quarterback, or if he would be able to fully accept the role of, you are coming in here to be a backup. You are nothing more. You are there to maybe help Shane Buechele if he sticks around, and you are there to just be an extra pair of, an extra brain for Patrick Mahomes to bounce ideas off of, along with Matt Nagy and company. You are nothing more than that, though. You will not be a starting quarterback. You will not take the starting job. You may never actually get to play a meaningful snap. If Carson accepts that and wants to do it, I'm not necessarily against it, but just not an option I take. Partly because I really do think the Chiefs, with all the things they're doing with Shane Buechele, it kind of would seem super weird for the moment to finally come up where he can be the backup quarterback, and he just doesn't get it. It just feels weird and feels like, some of the things they've done have been kind of not made a lot of sense. But backup quarterback's a spot where you can do some weird things. But Texter, that's not the worst idea I've ever heard. And I do think there is some intriguing possibilities to that. I would not do it, but I'm also not going to get up in arms if the Chiefs and Brett Veach actually did go through with it. That's what I'll say on that idea, Texture. I do appreciate you. As we wrap up the show, you can still be involved on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429, or in the live comment section of our YouTube live stream as well. But to wrap up the show today, kind of take us closer to the finish line, we're going to look at some Big 12 hoops going on tonight. Most notably, K-State, Oklahoma. Kellis and I, Kellis Robinett, joined me at the top of the hour. I want to thank Kellis again for coming on and joining me. We discussed K-State and Oklahoma and what to do. And there's both things you can take away from the first matchup between K-State and Oklahoma and things you can't or shouldn't, is actually the word I'd use. What you can take away from it is Oklahoma kind of has K-State's number as of late. Porter Moser at Oklahoma has never lost to Kansas State. Those things matter. Like, those factors matter, which will mean the matchup will probably be tough this evening from Bramlage. That also being said, I think it's important to note that was when K-State was playing some of their worst ball overall. And Jerome Tang has noted his team was gassed. They, as he would say, didn't have legs. And that's been the biggest thing for me, looking at this K-State team and when they play well versus when they play poorly, is, do they have legs? Do they have energy? Do they have the ability to play at that tempo they love to play at? And Jerome Tang has noted that he's worked on, giving the guys more rest, not pushing them as hard, because he thinks he actually overworked them during that period. And that's what led to those back-to-back losses at Texas Tech and at Oklahoma, in addition to being on the road, which is traditionally a very hard place to win. So with all that in consideration, I'm with Kellis. I do think K-State wins tonight, though I think it is close. But Brendan and I discussed it during CrossTalk as well. I hope Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson can really go out with a bang. And I don't mean they beat Oklahoma by 1 billion and Marquise and Keontae each drop 30. Not really that. But it's what they play well. And a version of playing well could just be, 15 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists if you're Keontae Johnson. Playing well for Marquise would be, like a 16-point, 10-assist night. Things that are good games. Like, you look at them and go, wow, they played well. But they're not those astronomical, oh my goodness numbers like Marquise Noel was putting up earlier this year. But with the way those two guys have played and what they have done for this program and the way they have really ingrained themselves into the culture of K-State, I just want them to end on a high note, man. They deserve it. They've earned it. They've earned a good, proper send-off in Manhattan for how they've played, because both of those guys have meant so much in kind of different ways to Kansas State. Keontae Johnson is that alpha they've been missing for years, of that guy that's just, you know what? I'm a really damn good basketball player. Put the ball in my hands. I'm going to go get us some buckets. That was my thing all preseason before the season started when we were talking about Kansas State last year. My point was, do they have a guy who can go get them points at the end of the shot clock? Because the thing, I still remember when we were previewing this team before the basketball season began, I thought defense would be their calling card based on Jerome Tang's background, and offense was going to be the question. I was like, I don't know if this team can score. Will they be able to run good offensive sets? Will they be able to have guys to go get buckets? Will they have proper shooting? And I was kind of wrong. It was the inverse. They were great offensively. It was the defense that actually had some question marks. And it really picked up some things on both ends of the floor these last few games. But Keontae's just done such a good job to elevate this program and I think also show for further transfers down the line, hey, you can come in here, learn under Coach Tang, and really have a great year in Manhattan. Make this place a bit of a place that transfers are willing to go to get better. And really, finish up their college careers, a place where, if you want a bigger role, you could maybe get it and do it well if you're willing to put in the work. That's what I think Keontae Johnson has done for this K-State team. And then Marquise Noel, man, I will not lie to anybody at all. I was one of the biggest Marquise Noel haters last year, and I'll admit it, because he just played so recklessly. And so much of just Marquise Noel ball, taking credit. Like Brennan and I brought up during CrossTalk again, like the Iowa State game where he just took a logo 3 to end the game for no reason. Like, no reason did he have to do that. And I'll admit it, going into this year, I was like, that's why I was like, that guy's going to be your leader. Okay. But he's impressed me. And now I love watching that kid play. I'm going to miss watching Marquise Noel play basketball, man, because he is a scrappy little dude who just, he pulls those crazy shots, and Jerome Tang calls him vitamins. He gets one. You get one. And he'll pull them. And the fact that he can pull them and make them is just so impressive. But then just the way he's leading this team and facilitating the ball, leading the Big 12 in assists, he's just become so much more of a complete overall player. That's been great to see. And the leadership he's evolved into. I didn't know if Marquise Noel could be a leader on a team. I didn't. I thought there was too much me in his game. I was wrong. And I will flat out admit. And honestly, I don't really think it was I was wrong. I was wrong to think he couldn't change and doubted Jerome Tang's ability to get him to buy in. And Jerome Tang did. And Marquise Noel has bought in, has played so incredibly well. I mean, so much of this team. So I'm excited for them to be honored. Guys like Daisy Seals, Baby Giola, Tyke Green, the walk-ons, the managers. I'm excited for all and every senior to get an opportunity to have their little moment in the sun and be honored tonight at Bramlage Coliseum, because it's going to be fun. It's going to be a nice thing for them to get honored, to be looked at, to have a good time. For K-State, for the game itself tonight, I think they just need to play within themselves. I don't think anything extra is what's needed for K-State to win tonight. I think if they play K-State basketball, good, tough offense, hard offense, fast offense, shoot the ball well, and play good, hard defense, I think they win. Because they always play better at Bramlage. They got their legs better than last time against Oklahoma. Remember, this game was tied against Oklahoma at the half, round 1, and then they just got ran off the court in the second half. I really think as long as K-State plays K-State basketball, I think they'll beat Oklahoma. Much like with Kellis, I don't think it's a blowout. I would take K-State by maybe 5 or 6 at the most. I think this is close for a good long while, but I really feel the Wildcats are going to get the job done tonight and senior note on a bang, end it with a victory, finish up with only one loss at Bramage Coliseum all year, which was a close loss, which is a great home record to have, a great year to have, to make the Octagon of Doom again. It's been great. I think this is a nice little bow to wrap up their season, which is one more regular season game left coming up on Saturday. But overall, it'll be a fun one. Again, tip-off for K-State Oklahoma is coming up at 7 o'clock tonight. You can watch it both in ESPN Plus, or you can hear it on your home for K-State Athletics, 580 WIBW, pregame starting at 6 o'clock. So even more fun. You can listen to me here up until 3. You listen to Brendan and Dan for 580 Sports Talk 3 to 6, and you roll that right into K-State pregame. I'm just saying that's an option, and I might say to myself, a pretty darn good option. But it should be fun with K-State and Oklahoma coming up tonight from Bramage Coliseum. We'll take one final timeout, wrap things up with the mic drop coming up next. Time for the mic drop here to wrap up this edition of Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. I want to thank all of you, as always, for joining me on a solo edition of the show. It is so much fun at times getting to do this thing solo. I will be happy for Jay to be back to take a little bit of less workload off of me coming up tomorrow, but it'll be fun nonetheless. And I want to thank you all for joining me on today's edition of Mic'd Up. My mic drop is simple. It's 2 parts. 1, KU, Big 12 champions for the 17th time under head coach Bill Self. It feels so sweet. It's great every time. Secondly, K-State, go get a win on senior night. I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be great. Keontae Johnson, Marquise Noel, end this year on a high note at your home schedule. It's going to be great. That'll do it for Mic'd Up today. Coming up next, here from 3 to 6, 580 Sports Talk with Brendan and Dan.
The third of our 580